So I remember when open world games became a huge thing. Specifically I remember Skyrim, I remember playing the first Assassin's Creed games, and of course with open world games you can think about many things. Of course the first Legend of Zelda could be called an open world game. They've been around for a while, but there was a certain point where this craze caught on, and it was open world everything. Specifically the franchises most people think about, and the ones that I think about when I think, oh, they went too far with this, are Far Cry and the Assassin's Creed series, where it was just too much bloat, too much time being invested, and too much of a shallow experience in these gaming worlds. And now we're seeing open world games live long enough to see themselves become the villain. Everyone's talking about open world fatigue. It's been a hot topic for a while now. Specifically, when I remember hearing about it was maybe Far Cry 5 or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, when everybody was like, what in the world are we doing? There's just so much nothing to do in this game that I don't know why I'm spending my time here. Why am I playing this game? It's not respecting my time. Those sort of questions started to arise when I remember back in the day, the collectathon style games were so fun. They were the hot topic and people didn't mind. A lot of the times back then, me personally, all I had was time, so I didn't think about it too consistently. But nowadays, even myself, I find myself thinking, why am I doing this? And I've started adapting different strategies to kind of combat that open world fatigue that I find in myself as well. The central problem that I see with these games, there are a few of them that I'll go over, but the central problem is really that these games are not empty enough. They aren't committing to being truly empty in an artistic and a creative way. There's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. The wrong way includes just putting pinpoints on a map and having random NPCs that give you some shallow quest, rather than tactily placing those NPCs around the map. And maybe they don't even have to say anything, but as long as they're providing a cool purpose, as long as they're wandering around and it looks like they're a part of the world, rather than just some sort of statue that's standing there to give you quests, that stands there day and night. Again, there's a right way to do all of these things, such as environments. Let's say there's this one place, this cave you go in. As you walk into the cave, you realize, I've been in this cave 50 times over because this is sort of a procedurally generated cave. Enemies are the same. It sort of starts to lose its interesting, level to it. It starts to lose you as a gamer. It takes your attention out of it. It's those little touches where they're not doing emptiness right. A certain genre that has to nail emptiness, horror games. Think about in Resident Evil 2 Remake, or again, any horror game, Dead Space. When you're walking through the hallways of wherever you are, if you're in the police department, if you're in the ship, and there's a corner you turn and you're expecting something to be there, and there's nothing there. That is a proper use of empty space. Gets you anxious. It makes you wonder whether the corner after that is also going to be empty, or if it's another scare. If they keep using that jump scare around every corner, it loses its power. You aren't going to fear anything. Your mind won't sort of take over that experience and have you terrified. When it comes down to open worlds, this concept can apply as well though. Think of a recent example, a game like Elden Ring. A game that I really enjoyed, had a great time with, but its open world was its most interesting aspect, as well as, to me, one of its biggest flaws. That open world often led me into interesting, mines or interesting fights. Whatever it led me to, I did often find myself finding cool NPCs, whatever it was. It did a good job of sending me down an interesting path, finding an interesting quest, and going from there. But there were too many times where I round a corner and there's nothing there. I've been on this massive enemy spree fighting 10 enemies. I get to the end and there's nothing there, not even a chest or anything. And it's really an interesting contrast with that series because it's part of what they lost when they transitioned from the Dark Souls 1 sort of style into the Elden Ring style. It's a sacrifice they made and it paid off for a lot of people. It's a sacrifice many series are making to sort of become larger, to appeal more to, more of a mainstream audience, because open world games get people excited. If you look at two of the biggest games of all time, really, we're talking about Breath of the Wild and Skyrim. Those games captured no one else's attention. Those games captured everybody's attention, and that was because of how the open world led to interesting possibilities and led to organic moments, and it allowed everybody to experience the game in such a different way that everybody wanted to play it and they could make it their own. There's no wrong way to play a game like Skyrim, but there sort of is a wrong way to play a game like Dead Space, like Gears of War. These more linear games, there sort of is a wrong way. Even though you do have to do certain things to get to the ends of these games, you're perfectly fine never getting to the end of them. Whereas in these linear non-open world games, that's pretty much all you have to do. That is the entire goal. And it really confines the experience to a certain group of players that want to do that and find that interesting. It's not reliant on the story. I mean, the prime example here is, of course, Death Stranding when it comes to utilizing empty space in a powerful way. I didn't love that game. Not a huge fan of it. Nothing to do with Kojima. I love Metal Gear Solid. But when it comes to those games, Death Stranding, it really uses empty space well. It's kind of the master of, negative space, where you're walking and there's nothing there. You're sort of expecting something at all times, but it never really comes. And sometimes you're walking along a landscape and you get hit by the music, the soundtrack, the pan out. It's cinematic all of a sudden, and there you are, appreciating the empty space for what it is, and you kind of take a moment to recollect your thoughts and realize what's happening. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a very courageous move by Death Stranding, but it's something that, again, can be done well in open world games, and that game does it really well. It allows you to sort of reflect on what you're doing. Or take a game like Subnautica, which uses empty space to its complete and total benefit. That is the entire point of the game, is fearing empty space. You're wandering around, the ocean itself feels like an empty space, and that's kind of all there is to it. And then of course we have Breath of the Wild, which of course has a ton of empty spaces, but there are also a lot of lived in spaces. A lot of these open worlds that utilize these empty spaces well are of course post-apocalyptic games that sort of have that element to them, that kind of tell a story by being empty. And even those empty spaces aren't quite as empty as they could be. Red Dead Redemption 2 as well. Now the point is, what I'm saying here about empty spaces, they're not empty enough, it's because what these games are doing that are causing us to have open world fatigue, whether it's the Horizon games, whether it's Assassin's Creed, whether it's Far Cry, they aren't giving us proper empty spaces. In fact, they're loading the game with just enough to cover every little square foot of the map. Even an empty spot in the game, an abandoned area, when you get there, it's to collect one thing, and that's all you're there for. When that's all your attention's on in that moment, to get that one little Animus shard, to get that one little collectible in Far Cry, or to climb the tower, whatever it is, when that's all you're there for, you are not appreciating that environment for what it is. You're just on a mission, and it's obviously one of the big critiques with the way open world games work now, is it's just a look at your map simulator. That's all you're doing, is looking at these different objectives, going to them, getting that little hit of dopamine, whatever it is, and then you're collecting it and moving on. You're barely even processing the environment in front of you. One game that I thought balanced this really well, I haven't played Ghost of Yotei yet, but Ghost of Tsushima. That game balanced it super well, where yes, they had the collectathon components to it, but they generally weren't just completely shallow experiences. Some of the actual things you can collect are going to meditate, and then you write a little poem, and there's some interactive elements to it, at least interesting aspects to it. And even when you're traveling there to those areas, when you get there, you can't help but take in the beauty, because it's not something that's sort of devoid of the experience. It's generally tied into the environment itself with the collectibles in Ghost of Tsushima. So when I'm saying these games aren't empty enough, it's because they're not committing to being totally void of something. They're not recognizing that it's okay to not have anything. They're stuffing the map full of so many things. They're leaving us to not be able to enjoy the actual experience in front of us, the environment, the map in front of us. But it's an interesting contrast, right? Because we could think back to Elden Ring, and we could think about how, okay, he was just saying that once he gets to the end of this corridor and there's nothing there, he said he was disappointed. What's up with that? That's where it ties in, though. That's where Elden Ring itself has to do a better job of actually saying, there's nothing here, don't lead us down that path. It's all about respecting time and how you design the game. It's an interesting thing that I have considered myself too, because maybe me having a problem with the Elden Ring map is because I've been so conditioned to look for those rewards because of how open world game design is nowadays. I don't know, it's a really interesting one. Let me know what you guys think of that one, because maybe that's my own conditioning that I'm sort of learning to question now in the moment when I get to the end of a cavern and there's no real reward there. It's interesting because as I say it out loud, it sounds kind of heinous. It's a really interesting thing, but there is something about Elden Ring. You go through such a trial. You fight and fight and fight, and those areas where you get somewhere and there's nothing there, as if you didn't get rewarded for that, which is different than just exploring a place in, let's say, Breath of the Wild and there being nothing there. You didn't really have to fight for it. You weren't trying to earn something. That is the key distinction there. Now, one way that these games can make this a better experience, even if the games are littered with everything on the map and there's so many things to do, the method of transportation really matters. It's something that I've thought about often, especially playing The Witcher 3, where Roach is a horrible experience. Horrible experience, perhaps. It's not fun to ride Roach. It feels awkward, especially if you're coming off of a game like Red Dead Redemption 2. It doesn't feel right. Or Ghost of Tsushima also was fun to ride the horse. Roach just doesn't feel like he was made to interact with the environment at all. It's often better and faster to run as Geralt. So when it comes down to that, the method of transportation is really important because The Witcher 3 has a really interesting world. It can, of course, be littered with so many things. I did not complete the map. There's too many things to do, but it was interesting enough. What makes it better, though, is having a good method of transportation so that those moments in the open world are actually interesting to you. Even a little game like Spider-Man, where the entire sequence of you moving around is swinging interactively with the environment. You're looking for places to swing from. Stuff like that's really interesting. You know, in Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda, you can build things, you can interact with the world in that way and fly off of places. You know an open world's good when you are not inclined to fast travel. This is kind of my rule. I know I've hit a good open world when I'm not fast traveling, unless, say, I'm going to a place I've already been to and the mission just sends me back and forth. In games like Skyrim, Oblivion, I'm not fast traveling often in those games because I know when I'm walking along the route, I'm going to organically find something, discover something along the way, find a new friend, be betrayed, whatever it might be. I know that that's going to find me there. Same with Fallout. These games do a great job of discouraging me from fast traveling. In Red Dead Redemption 2, I never wanted to fast travel because it was so beautiful to ride the horse, to see what kind of interesting nature experience would come up and surprise me. That's why I really like the new Assassin's Creeds, except for Valhalla, why I really like Odyssey and Origins, why I like the Far Cry series. Because the nature and the actual people in the environment are so interactive, it feels lived in. And I want to travel across a world that feels lived in, especially if the methods of transportation, like in those games, have good horseback riding, or there are vehicles in Far Cry. It keeps things interesting, it keeps things spicy. They have to do that right as well, and that helps cushion some of that. The fatigue is much better, and it's harder to achieve that high level of fatigue that we all have now if we're not fast traveling constantly. You know, it's the real problem with Starfield. It really captured all of the modern problems with open world gaming. It had the procedural generation, where we felt like we weren't getting any unique experiences to it, and it felt like we were going to that same cave over and over again. And the next problem, there was really nothing about the planets that felt lived in. We were going to the same, mining stations. Or I can't remember the names of the particular points of interest, but it was just those over and over again. The NPCs were the same, and there was almost nothing in between there. And then you also had the fast travel. It was just screen after screen after screen. It felt like a lot of the times we were playing a game from 2005 rather than a game from 2022 or 3, whenever Starfield came out. It kind of captures it all, and I think that's why that game was such a disappointment. It's coming from a game in Skyrim and Fallout where I rarely ever fast traveled, where it was one of the most interesting open worlds I'd ever found, because when I didn't fast travel, I was rewarded. When I just used my feet, when I used a horse, it felt good, it was interesting, I could do silly things with the horse. It was open world game design done well. Those games have their own problems in terms of the Bethesda games, where there are a lot of procedurally generated areas. But in between those, like I said, if that transportation, if the lack of fast travel is interesting enough, it provides a buffer for that. A lot of this, just like many things when it comes down to gaming and spending time doing anything with anyone or with anything, it comes down to time. It comes down to opportunity cost. And we feel this open world fatigue because we are seeing our time being spent and not being respected in these certain ways. That's why it's really cool that a game like Clair Obscur, like Baldur's Gate 3, these games are really popular, and it's not necessarily an open world game that's catching all of the attention, because these are more focused hybrid style games where they are open world, but they're focused. They take you on a narrative while giving you some of the same freedoms that open world gameplay give you. I think that that's the perfect combo here and the perfect way to make it fit. I think Metaphor ReFantazio also kind of made that interesting transition as well, where the Persona games are more linear. They don't really have that kind of open level of exploration, yes, in the dungeons, but in Metaphor, there were certain areas that you could wander around a desert and fight. And it's starting to get into that, more hybrid experience that I think is the healthy way to respect people's time, while also giving players the flexibility and the unique experiences that only open world games can provide. A lot of us, as we get older, start to realize we should respect our time. Let's say we start a TV series. Back in the day, I would have watched a few episodes of that TV series and I would have said, I'll just keep watching, might as well finish the season. But nowadays, if the first episode doesn't catch me, maybe the second, that's it. That's the entire job of those first episodes, I tell myself, so if they don't catch me, I'm out. Same thing with a book. I'll read a book for 10, 15 pages, sometimes more, I'll give them more of a chance, but really not much more than that, and that's it. It's lost me, and I'm done. Whereas before, I would have probably read the whole book, or read 100 at least. I would have kept going. And the same thing is true of video games, where I will play it, and if I'm not having a good time, I'll drop it. But even if I know I'm going to complete the game, I no longer spend my time in those vast open worlds, collecting everything, needing to do every side quest. I only do the side quests that intrigue me. If not, I go straight to the main quest, and that's it. And that's the best way to do this. If you're still getting these open world fatigue games just coming at you, and you really like what's going on in the game and you want to play it, you're playing AC Odyssey, you're playing AC Valhalla, and it's just such a collectathon. There's so many things you could do. You could play for well over 100 hours. Go for the main quest. Do the side quest that when you read the description or the character that talks to you seems interesting, follow through with those. Again, it's all about learning ourselves here. We're hoping the industry adapts as well, and I think it's heading in the right direction with the games that are getting praised these days. But when it comes down to it, we also have to take that initiative ourselves and kind of realize, I need to respect my own time too. I'll skip out on all those. Yes, I'm fatigued by it, but I won't let it take away my full interest of this game. The open world genre has just become so vast. It is anything, really. Most games are open world in some way. They have some format to them that are open world. I find some of them just feel as if they're open worlds just to be open worlds. And that's kind of the transition that I felt Halo Infinite made. It really was a shallow experience for me. It was fun to play, and it was a fun, shallow experience, of course, but that literally felt like a map designed to have bases, to have things to do, but there's nothing else in it. Some of the older games had levels to them, the older Halo games. And they had open world elements where you could kind of fight in an open combat, and maybe you'd steal a ghost, or maybe you'd do whatever. You could do your own thing, but the actual battlefield was open, rather than just having the entire map open and having it feel like some sort of I don't know, it felt like the game was 10 years old plus, because it was just attack this base, do this, here's this thing, go do this. And it was just a list of objectives, but the world did not tie into any of the story. What I mean by that, of course, the story took place in the world, but that particular map, it felt like it could have been anything. It felt like they could have made it look like anything. It was a backdrop for the story rather than an extra piece to the story. I want to be clear here, I guess. When it came to the open world, it is, of course, tied into the story, but that open world didn't evolve with the story, really, it felt like. It's as if the actual world stayed stagnant while the story was evolving, and it was just so jarring to go back into that world, to go to another base, to do this thing. The story continues, okay, now I'm back in there, I'm going out there. The world should be evolving with you. Again, I want to tie it into a game like Ghost of Tsushima. That map evolves as you're going through it. You keep going deeper and deeper, farther and farther out on the island, and you can feel sort of the sanctity of your experience falling apart as you get deeper into the darker parts of the island. And as you get farther into the island, you're experiencing more of Jin's story. It's getting darker, exposing a lot more of those flaws, and it's as if the map is growing along with you. I love the example of Red Dead Redemption 2. You are interacting with that map in so many ways. You can go to Saint Denis very early on. You don't see it in the same light as you do when you go there after being near the end of the story. You can go back to the place where the story first started as well. Every little piece of that map has a specific memory. Every person in that map ties into the memory. It's beautifully well done, and GTA does this as well. Sometimes in GTA, in the story mode, you're driving through an apartment building and you realize, holy cow, that's where I had that crazy shootout, and that's where we blew up that helicopter. There's all this stuff that makes you feel connected to it, that goes beyond just shooting bases in Halo and the world not changing at all. You can feel it, you can sense it with the way your character's evolving, how you're getting these nice new cars, how Arthur has new friends around him, how the camp has moved, stuff like that. To tie into another game that is open world but controlled, contained, a game like Prey, where as you're going through the map, you're starting to notice more creatures. It gets more dangerous. The same common areas you're going in and out of, you know, it's sort of Metroidvania style map on that ship. It's evolving with you. It's open world in a sense, not as open as Skyrim, but it's evolving with you. You are learning different parts of that world. It's getting more terrifying. It's feeling like the ship is falling apart, and you're sort of falling prey to whatever's going on there. You need your gadgets. Mafia 2 as well, a game where you're moving through the city, and as you move along the story, sometimes it's snowy. It starts to feel like the city's getting older. The cars are changing as the years go on. The characters are looking different. The city feels different. There are different businesses opening up as the story progresses. Little things like that go a long way. Even just stuff like weather events, like seasons changing. Little tiny things like that go a really long way in how they implement time. I mean, something like time in Majora's Mask, even though it is sort of confined in many ways, it made that map feel so alive, because at any given time there could be something different going on. You can only do certain things at specific times, and it made the map feel so lived in for a game that was on the Nintendo 64. I mean, even more lived in than any of the other games in that sort of same time frame. You know, Ocarina of Time never quite felt as lived in as Majora's Mask because it's not evolving. It's not changing in the same way that Majora's Mask is dynamically, so fast, so interesting. Another recent good example of this, I think, where I very rarely fast traveled and actually found myself collecting a lot of stuff, was in Hogwarts Legacy. That game, with its seasons changing, gave new life to the map every quarter of the game, basically. And it was really fun to explore the land again and see how Hogwarts has changed, see how everything around it changed with the new season, see where everyone is. That was really well done, and it kept the game feeling alive and made me want to explore, as well as the broom travel. That game did open world game mechanics really well. I don't know, at the end of the day, open world games they're facing a lot of criticism these days. They're not what they used to be. The difference is they are what they used to be. But we are recognizing them for what they really are, which is oftentimes a shallow experience. It's just a place for the story to exist, for our character to interact with, but not necessarily for a story to play off of, like a lot of games can. Like they should. All it takes are these little touches that are missing from a lot of these games. And all it takes is being intentional and using these empty spaces interestingly. Creating places where we can just appreciate the environment without feeling the desire to collect a little thing. To be kind of OCD about how we're experiencing these games and taking every little piece about it, every little collectathon. Because we feel like we have to. It takes away from the game. We don't need these things. I think that people as a whole are recognizing it's okay to have a game that's not as large as some of the most popular games are. Everybody got Breath of the Wild fever. And it's a great game, but nothing can be Breath of the Wild. That open world is special, and it spoke to a lot of older fans as well as new fans in a way that it really can't be replicated like it was. Every game genre, every game map style, every game combat mechanic, it has its era. When you think about turn-based fighting, these things have to evolve. Look at how turn-based combat has evolved in Clair Obscur. Now people are more willing to try it out. Now people are interested in going back and playing the old turn-based games because of how they evolved it. And the same is true of open world games. It's almost as if it's become a genre of its own. But these open worlds need to evolve as well. And I think they are. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you experience open world fatigue, how you're feeling about it, and what some of the best games are that we can look forward to in the future as examples of good, well-designed open world games. Thanks for watching.